Dance with Me by Dark Shadow 051. It was a calm and peaceful night in the city of Ponyville. Luna's moon was shining brightly in the cloudless night sky. The weather was warm and the night was peaceful as ever. However, as every pony was getting ready to go to bed, two small fillies found themselves walking along the cobblestone streets, heading towards Sugar Cube Corner.
Are you sure we're allowed to do this, Scootaloo?
Asked the white unicorn filly.
I don't see why not.
Said the orange Pegasus filly.
It's a party. We have just as much a right to be there as every pony else does. Relax, Sweetie Belle. Everything's gonna be fine. Trust me. I hope you're right.
Said Sweetie Belle.
I'm just worried that we'll get caught is all. So we snuck out of our homes to go. Big deal.
Said Scootaloo.
How are we supposed to live and learn if we don't take a few risks every now and then? Besides, Applebloom said that she would meet us there. You don't want to let her down, do you? No. That's a spirit. Come on, or else the party will end before we get there.
As quickly and as quietly as the two fillies could, they made their way to Sugar Cube Corner, where a party, hosted by none other than Pinkie Pie, was taking place. When the bakery was in sight, the two fillies were wide-eyed with amazement. The whole entire establishment was lit up like nothing else they had ever seen before. Streamers and balloons were covering the entire outside with strobe lights could be seen, and loud dance music could be heard from within. A small line of ponies were slowly making their way inside the bakery, ready to join the party. Fortunately for the two fillies, there weren't any security ponies outside to stop them. Apparently, any pony who was any pony was invited and allowed to enter. The two fillies smiled at each other and made their way into the front door to enter. As they did, a small wave of guilt flooded through Sweetie Belle's body. Of course, the Cutie Mark Crusaders had their entire relations if they could go, but one by one, their siblings and parents told them no, mainly because it was taking place very late at night. Furthermore, because any pony who was any pony was allowed to come, they didn't want the three of them to get into any trouble, so they were told they weren't allowed. However, taking no for an answer, the three fillies agreed that they would sneak out of their homes and attend anyway. The only one who wasn't very comfortable with the idea was Sweetie Belle, but she agreed nonetheless. When the two fillies entered the bakery, they were even more amazed at what they saw. The entire place looked like it was redesigned from bakery into a nightclub. Most of the tables that used to be in the center of the store had been pushed back to the sides to allow more space to serve as a dance floor. The counter had been used to ring up the patrons, had been turned into a DJ station, where the infamous vinyl scratch was spinning the beats for the attendees. The music produced by DJ Pone3 was like nothing else they had ever heard. On the left side of the dance floor was the table that was lined with different assortments of food and drinks for the visitors. On the other side of the dance floor were the regular tables for ponies to sit. As the two fillies gazed upon the place, they found it hard to believe that it was the same Sugar Cube Corner that they went to every day. However, the two of them decided not to make their presence known to any pony that might recognize them. So, Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle went over to a table in the furthest corner from every pony else and decided to wait for the Applebloom to arrive.
This place is really awesome,
said Scootaloo, trying her best to shout over the sound of the loud music.
I know!
Shouted Sweetie Belle, offering a smile she didn't know her friend could see.
How much longer do you think Applebloom will be? Not sure,
said Scootaloo.
It is a long way from Sweet Apple Acres to here, so it might take a while before she gets here.
With nothing left to say, the two fillies sat at a small table and waited for their third member to arrive. As they waited, the music kept going on and on. Ponies of different shapes and sizes were dancing like they had never danced before. As the two fillies sat and waited, Scootaloo couldn't help but watch the ponies tearing it up on the dance floor. She was really good at performing maneuvers on her scooter, so dancing was something like that she was sort of used to. After several moments of waiting, the two fillies were starting to get a little bored. They couldn't really do anything without running the risk of being seen. What felt like half an hour passed, and there was still no sign of Applebloom anywhere. Scootaloo was just about to offer to just give up on waiting and leave when she heard a song playing from the DJ, one that really caught her interest. Scootaloo closed her eyes and began to absorb the music that was playing. It started with a synthesizer and quickly developed into guitars and drums. It was really upbeat and catchy to her. She found herself tapping and hoof on the floor with the music, really getting the vibe of the beat. Then a guitar-like solo began playing, and Scootaloo found herself bobbing her head in time with the music. Unbeknownst to her, Sweetie Belle was watching her movement with the music, a smile on her face. When Scootaloo opened her eyes, she stopped and couldn't help but blush.
Sorry,
She shouted,
this song is catchy. Yeah, it kind of is,
replied Sweetie Belle. Then an idea came across Scootaloo's mind, one that she knew the white unicorn filly was going to be against.
Hey, Sweetie Belle,
Said Scootaloo, offering a hoof to her from across the small table they were sitting at.
dance with me.
Sweetie Belle stared at her friend, not sure of what to say to her. All she could do was look at her friend, and then extended her hoof, and then back at her friend.
Scootaloo,
She protested.
you know that's not a good idea. I know,
She admitted.
but it beats sitting here all night doing nothing. Besides, it's sort of dark in here as it is. Who's really going to see us? Well,
Said the white filly.
the truth is, I don't know how to dance. What?
Said Scootaloo, not able to hear what she just said.
I don't know how to dance.
Shouted a little louder.
That's okay, I'll show you. It's not that hard, it's really fun.
Without waiting for a response, Scootaloo got up from the table, grabbed Sweetie Belle by the hoof, and dragged her onto the dance floor. Sweetie Belle's heart was racing, not because dancing would run the risk of them being caught, but because she didn't want to make a fool of herself in front of her friend. Soon, the two of them were on the dance floor in the far corner, so that they wouldn't bump into any pony.
Okay,
Said Sweetie Belle,
now what? All you have to do is move with the music.
instructed Scootaloo.
Just let your body do the work.
Then, Scootaloo began to dance, swinging her hips back and forth in time with the beat. She clapped her hooves on the ground with a particular part of the song called for it. Then, she began bouncing up and down in time with the beat, her eyes closed and a small smile across her lips. Sweetie Belle watched as her friend danced before her. She had never been one to dance, and she didn't know if now was a good time to start. However, she watched the way Scootaloo was moving, and convinced her to at least try it and do it, although she knew it wasn't natural for her. Soon, Sweetie Belle began moving with the music, swaying her hips like the Pegasus filly had before. She moved back and forth, feeling the beat of the music beginning to course through her body. The bass of the music felt like it was hitting her in the chest, but she didn't care. She was having fun. Next, Sweetie began clapping her hooves on the ground with the music. When she did, she noticed Scootaloo was doing the same with her. Because they were facing each other, it looked like they were in sync with one another. When Sweetie Belle stomped her left hoof, Scootaloo stomped her left hoof at the same time, and vice versa. Then, when the guitar solo came back, they both began dancing in different motions. Scootaloo was jumping up and down with her whole body, one forehoof in front of the other. Then, she'd sway her hips again before repeating the same jumping motion as before. Sweetie Belle only lifted her upper part of her body, allowing her two forehooves to lift at the same time. Then, she'd bend her knees with the music, allowing her body to lower and rise before continuing to jump like she had before. Then they'd dance close up to each other and back away, like they were a pair of magnets. All the while, they had their eyes closed and smiles on their faces. They had only been dancing for a few moments, but it felt like they had been dancing for a long time. Soon, they began to dance in circles, keeping in rhythm to the song. When the song stopped and returned to its synthesized opening, the two of them opened their eyes and looked at each other for a few seconds. Then, as the music continued, they began to dance again, following the same pattern as they had before. They were all over the place, going in every direction they could muster. As they did, Sweetie Belle was sure that the two of them were going to bump into a table or another pony at the party. Fortunately for them, she didn't. She figured they were a good distance away from everything else, so they had no worry. When it came time for them to clap their hoofs again, they couldn't help but notice that the clapping was a little bit louder than the first time. However, they ignored it and continued dancing, smiles beaming on their faces. Moving in time with the music, they managed to catch a glimpse of each other for a moment, staring into each other's eyes. They hadn't noticed anything else except for each other. When their eyes locked into one another, they smiled at each other, their cheeks turning a small shade of red. Whether it was out of embarrassment from dancing, or dancing too much, Neither of them could tell. Then the song ended. The two fillies stopped moving and stared at each other. Smiles plastered on their faces. However, their moment didn't last long before they heard the sounds of stomping coming from all around them. They took their eyes off each other for a moment and looked around to see what every pony was stomping for. They were stomping for them, a pony's way of clapping. And then the two fillies' hearts began to race. While they were dancing, they hadn't noticed that they managed to go from the corner of the dance floor into the dead center. Every pony was standing around them, forming a giant circle, while Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle stood in the center.
Yeah, let's hear it for the dancing fillies!
Shouted Vinyl from the DJ's booth. Then, every pony there began stomping for them again. As they did, Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle exchanged worried looks at one another. They didn't expect to be the center of attention like they did.
Well, this is embarrassing,
said Scootaloo, as she smiled weakly at her friend.
Yeah.
Was the only response Sweetie Belle could muster at the moment.
I have to hand it to you, though,
said Scootaloo, looking at her friend.
You're a pretty good dancer. Thanks,
she replied.
I didn't know I had it in me.
Neither did I,
said a voice behind them, making the two of them freeze in fear. Slowly, the two of them had turned around to see Applejack standing behind them. The moment their eyes connected with hers, their faces turned to one of guilt.
Busted,
mumbled Sweetie Belle under her breath.
But how did...
began Scootaloo.
Applebloom tried sneaking out, but was caught before she could make it here,
said Applejack, as she escorted the two fillies from the dance floor out of the door of the bakery.
When she was caught, she spilled the beans about what you three were planning.
The two fillies hung their heads in shame, not sure what to say to her. However, before either of them could say anything, they heard the sound of Applejack chuckling from behind them.
Don't you two worry yourselves,
she said, a small smile on her face.
I used to sneak out of the house when I was your age, too. I won't tell any pony about tonight, but you have to promise you'll never disobey what you're told again. That clear?
Crystal,
said the two in unison.
Good,
said Applejack.
Now you two get on home before you're caught.
The two fillies nodded and began making their way home, thanking Applejack for not telling the two of them. As the two trotted out for their homes, they both had smiles on their faces and red cheeks. They might have been caught and let off the hook, but there was one thing the small fillies were absolutely sure about. It was worth it. The end.